Do-hyun stood in front of the massive metal doors and took a deep breath. His small travel bag hung from one shoulder, and his maintenance uniform felt too clean for what was coming. The doors opened with a loud hiss and he stepped inside the Valtorian Military Academy. The first thing that hit him was the smell. It was different from anything on Earth. There was something wild in the air, like a mix of fur and metal and something he could not name. The second thing was the size of everything. The hallways were huge, built for creatures much bigger than humans. Do-hyun was not tall even for a human. He stood at average height with dark hair and a face that people often forgot. That was fine with him. He never wanted to stand out. He just wanted to do his job, collect his pay, and maybe see a bit of the galaxy. The interspecies cultural exchange program seemed like a good idea 3 months ago when he signed the papers. Now standing in this alien place, he wondered if he made a mistake. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Do-hyun turned and saw Commander Ravik for the first time. The Valtorian was enormous. He stood at least 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders covered in golden and black striped fur. His face was like a big cat from Earth, but more intelligent, more aware. Sharp amber eyes looked down at Do-hyun, and the commander's whiskers twitched. "You are the human," Ravik said. His voice was deep and rumbled like thunder. "Small." "Yes, sir," Do-hyun replied. He tried to stand straighter. "I am Do-hyun. I'm here for maintenance work." Ravik nodded slowly. His tail swished behind him, and Do-hyun noticed the thick muscle in it. Everything about the Valtorians was built for hunting, for fighting. Their claws clicked on the metal floor as they walked. Their ears moved independently, always listening. "These were predators. Follow me," Ravik said. "I will show you your assignment." They walked through the academy, and Do-hyun saw more Valtorians. Some were adults like Ravik, tall and powerful. Others were younger, smaller, but still bigger than Do-hyun. These must be the cubs, he thought. The students who came here to learn how to fight. The cubs stopped their activities to watch him pass. Their large eyes followed his every movement. Some whispered to each other in their own language, a mix of growls and chirps that Do-hyun could not understand. He felt like a mouse walking through a house full of cats. Ravik led him to a large open area. The training hall was massive, with high ceilings and a floor covered in sand and other materials. Training dummies stood in corners, some torn and damaged. There were weapons on the walls, strange tools that Do-hyun did not recognize. The smell of sweat and effort filled the air. "This is the training wing," Ravik explained. "The cubs practice here every day. They learn to hunt, to fight, to survive. Your job is to keep this place clean." Do-hyun looked around at the mess. There was sand everywhere, mixed with what looked like fake blood from training exercises. Pieces of training dummy stuffing scattered across the floor. Equipment left in random places. It would take hours to clean properly. "I understand," Do-hyun said. "When do you want me to start?" "Now," Ravik said. "The cubs are finishing their morning session. Instructor Taros will supervise them. You may begin when they take their break." Another Valtorian entered the hall. This one had dark gray fur with white stripes. Instructor Taros was slightly smaller than Ravik, but still twice Do-hyun's size. He nodded at the human, then called out commands to the cubs in the training area. Do-hyun watched as about 15 young Valtorians practiced their combat moves. They moved with natural grace, their bodies designed for this work. They struck training dummies with clawed paws, leaped between platforms, and wrestled with each other under Taros's watchful eye. Despite their size and power, they were still young. Sometimes they got distracted. Sometimes they played instead of practicing. They reminded Do-hyun of teenagers back home, just bigger and with more teeth. After 30 minutes, Taros called for a break. The cubs immediately relaxed, dropping their serious expressions. They gathered in groups, grooming their fur and talking. Some lay on their backs, stretching in the sun that came through high windows. Others play-fought with less intensity than before. Do-hyun saw his chance. He walked to a storage room near the training hall and found cleaning supplies. There was a mop, a bucket, and bottles of industrial cleaner that worked on multiple alien species messes. The equipment was designed for Valtorian hands, so everything was oversized. The mop handle was thick and long. The bucket was huge. But Do-hyun was used to adapting. He filled the bucket with water and cleaner, mixed it properly, and carried it back to the training hall. The cubs watched him with mild curiosity as he began to work. Do-hyun started at one corner of the hall, dipping the mop in the cleaning solution and pushing it across the floor in wide, sweeping motions. Back and forth, back and forth. The rhythm was familiar and calming. This was something he knew how to do well. He hummed quietly as he worked, an old song from Earth that his mother used to sing. The dirty water turned clean sections of floor dark and shiny. Do-hyun moved steadily, creating a pattern of clean and dirty areas. He was focused on his work, not paying attention to the cubs anymore. He did not notice when several pairs of amber eyes locked onto the moving mop head. He did not see when 3 cubs stopped their grooming and sat up straighter. He did not hear the small chirp one of them made to the others. Do-hyun just kept cleaning, pushing the mop back and forth in steady, rhythmic movements. The mop head swished across the floor, its strands moving like something alive. To Do-hyun, it was just a tool doing its job. To the watching cubs, it was something else entirely. Their pupils grew wider, expanding into large black circles. Their tails began to twitch at the tips, slowly at first, then faster. Their bodies lowered slightly, muscles tensing. The instinct was too strong to ignore. Something was moving in front of them, low to the ground, making quick back-and-forth motions. Every hunting instinct the cubs had learned told them the same thing. This was prey. This was practice. This was what they were supposed to chase. 3 cubs dropped into perfect hunting crouches, their whiskers pointed forward. Their ears focused on the sound of the mop swishing against the floor. They began to move forward slowly, carefully, placing each paw down without making a sound. Do-hyun continued cleaning, completely unaware that he had just become part of a training exercise he never signed up for. The 3 cubs moved with perfect silence. Their names were Kirill, Venna, and Thrax, and they were some of the best students in their training group. Kirill had dark brown fur with black stripes and was the fastest runner. Venna was smaller but clever, with reddish fur that stood out among her classmates. Thrax was the biggest of the 3, with muscles already showing under his gray and white coat. They spread out naturally, forming a triangle around their target. This was what Instructor Taros had taught them last week. When hunting in a group, surround the prey. Cut off escape routes. Work together. The cubs exchanged quick glances, communicating without words. Their ear positions and tail movements told each other exactly what they were thinking. Do-hyun remained focused on his work. The floor near the main combat circle was particularly dirty. Someone had spilled training oil there, and it had mixed with sand to create a sticky mess. He scrubbed harder, putting more force into his movements. The mop had moved faster, more aggressively. This made the cubs even more excited. Kirill chirped softly, a sound only Valtorians could hear properly. It meant ready. Venna flicked her tail twice. That meant yes. Thrax's ears turned forward. He was prepared to move. The human was testing them, Kirill thought. This was clearly a new kind of training drill. The small alien moved the strange prey object with such purpose, such deliberate patterns. It was not random. This was a challenge. The human wanted to see if they could catch it. Do-hyun bent down to scrub a particularly stubborn stain. This brought him closer to the ground, more vulnerable. The cubs saw their opportunity. Kirill exploded forward first, covering the distance in 3 powerful bounds. He landed with both front paws directly on the mop head, pinning it to the floor with all his weight. Do-hyun yelped in surprise and stumbled backward. The mop handle jerked in his hands. "What the?" he started to say, but his words got cut off as Venna joined the attack. She pounced on the mop from the side, her claws batting at the stringy white strands. They moved and twisted under her paws, and she chirped with excitement. "No, no, stop!" Do-hyun shouted. He tried to pull the mop away, but it was stuck under 200 pounds of adolescent Valtorian. Thrax saw the human pulling on the training object and understood immediately. This was phase 2 of the drill. The prey was fighting back. He leaped forward and grabbed the mop handle with his front paws, tugging in the opposite direction. Now it was a contest. Do-hyun pulled one way, trying to free his cleaning tool. Thrax pulled the other way, thinking this was exactly what he was supposed to do. Kirill and Venna continued to attack the mop head itself, which was now making interesting squeaking sounds against the floor. Other cubs noticed the commotion. Their heads turned to see what was happening. They saw their classmates engaged in what looked like an exciting training exercise with the new human instructor. Without hesitation, more cubs rushed over to join. "Stop! Please stop!" Do-hyun yelled, but his voice was lost in the growing chaos. A cub named Solus jumped into the mix trying to pin down the mop handle. Another cub, Mara, decided to help by grabbing the bucket. She knocked it over, sending soapy water across the floor. This made everything slippery and even more exciting. Do-Yun's boots lost traction on the wet floor. He slipped and fell backward, landing hard on his rear end. His hands released the mop handle. The cubs paused for just a second, looking at the now motionless mop. It was not moving anymore. The interesting back-and-forth motion had stopped, but the human was still moving. Do-Hyun scrambled to his feet, breathing hard. His uniform was soaked with cleaning solution. His hair was a mess. He backed away slowly, holding up his hands. Okay, he said, trying to sound calm. Everyone just calmed down. The cubs watched him move. Their heads tracked his every step. In their minds, this made perfect sense. The first part of the drill was over. Now the human was demonstrating evasion techniques. They needed to learn those too. Instructor Taros always said that knowing how to escape was just as important as knowing how to hunt. More cubs gathered around, forming a loose circle. There were about 12 of them now, all focused on Do-Hyun. Their tails swished with excitement. Their whiskers pointed forward. This was the most interesting training session they had experienced in weeks. Instructor Taros returned from his break to find complete chaos. Cubs were scattered across the training hall, gathered around something in the center. The floor was wet and slippery. The bucket was overturned. His training equipment was scattered everywhere. And in the middle of it all stood the small human looking terrified. "What is happening here?" Taros demanded, his voice booming across the hall. The cubs immediately responded to his authority. They sat down trying to look innocent. Their ears folded back slightly, a sign that they knew they might be in trouble. Do-Hyun pointed at the cubs, then at his mop, then at the wet floor. He was breathing too hard to form proper words. His heart was racing. He had faced many challenges in his life, but being surrounded by a dozen predatory aliens was a new experience. Taros looked at the scene. He looked at the cubs' excited faces. He looked at the human's confused expression. He looked at the mop lying on the floor like a defeated enemy. "Explain," he said to Kirill, who was usually the most articulate of the group. Kirill stood up straight, trying to show proper respect to his instructor. He chirped and growled in the Valtorian language, explaining what had happened. The human had introduced a new training drill. The moving target was excellent practice for their pouncing techniques. The pulling contest taught them about strength and determination. The evasion phase was just beginning when Instructor Taros arrived. Taros listened carefully. His whiskers twitched, which could mean many things. He looked at Do-Hyun again. "Is this true?" he asked in the common language that humans could understand. "Did you create a new training exercise?" "No," Do-Hyun protested. "I was just cleaning. I was doing my job." "They attacked my mop." Taros translated this for the cubs. They looked confused. "Cleaning? What was cleaning?" The human had moved the object in hunting patterns. The human had engaged in a strength contest. The human had demonstrated evasion by moving away. How was this not training? Venna spoke up, her voice higher than Kirill's but just as certain. She explained that the human's movements were too deliberate to be anything other than a lesson. The pattern was too perfect. The timing was too good. Clearly, this small alien was a very skilled instructor using methods they had never seen before. Do-Hyun wanted to argue, but he could see it was useless. The cubs genuinely believed he had been teaching them. They looked at him with respect now, with interest. They thought he was clever. They thought he was testing them in new ways. Instructor Taros's tail swished slowly as he considered the situation. On one hand, the human was clearly upset and had not intended any of this. On the other hand, the cubs had shown excellent teamwork, quick reactions, and proper hunting formation. They had performed very well, even if it was all a misunderstanding. "Return to your practice," Taros told the cubs. "Standard drills now." The cubs obeyed, but they kept glancing back at Do-Hyun as they moved to different areas of the training hall. They whispered to each other, already discussing what had happened. The human was interesting. The human was different. They wanted to see what other lessons he might teach. Do-Hyun picked up his mop with shaking hands. The bucket was empty, spilled across the floor. His carefully cleaned section was now covered in paw prints and more dirt than before. He had accomplished nothing except creating chaos. Taros stepped closer to him. "You should be more careful," the instructor said quietly. Young cubs have strong hunting instincts. Moving objects trigger their training. I was just cleaning, Do-hyun repeated weakly. He felt exhausted and his shift had barely started. Perhaps you should clean when the cubs are not present, Taros suggested. Then he walked away to supervise his students, leaving Do-hyun standing alone in a puddle of soapy water, wondering what he had gotten himself into. Do-hyun made a decision. He could not wait for the cubs to leave. He had a whole wing of the academy to clean before his shift ended, and he was already behind schedule. If he waited for the cubs to finish all their training, he would be working double shifts for weeks. That was not acceptable. He refilled his bucket, grabbed a new mop, and decided to work in a different section. The storage corridors needed attention too. Maybe if he worked away from the main training hall, the cubs would leave him alone. It was a good plan. It should have worked. Do-hyun started mopping the corridor that connected the training hall to the equipment storage rooms. He kept his movements small and controlled. No big sweeping motions. Nothing that might attract attention. Just quiet, careful cleaning. The floor was dusty but not too dirty. This would be quick work. He was wrong about being left alone. Kirill had noticed where the human went. He told Venna and Thrax. The three cubs watched from the doorway of the training hall, their eyes focused on the small figure moving down the corridor. The human was still teaching them, Kirill decided. This was a stealth lesson. See how quietly the instructor moved? See how he stayed close to the walls? This was advanced training. We should practice tracking, Venna whispered. Her ears twitched with excitement. Instructor Taro said we need to work on following prey without being noticed. Thrax nodded. The human is small and fast. Good practice. They slipped away from the main group, moving silently down the corridor behind Do-hyun. Their paws made almost no sound on the metal floor. Their breathing was controlled and quiet. This was what they were trained to do. This was what good hunters did. Do-hyun finished the first corridor and turned a corner. He felt pleased with himself. The floor looked clean. No cubs had bothered him. Maybe the rest of his shift would be peaceful. He started working on the next section, humming again. The song helped him keep rhythm with his mopping. The cubs followed, staying far enough back that Do-hyun did not notice them. They moved from shadow to shadow, using the equipment crates and storage lockers as cover. This was actually very good practice. The corridor was not designed for hunting games, so they had to be creative with their hiding spots. Do-hyun reached a junction where three corridors met. He paused, trying to remember which section he was supposed to clean next. His datapad was in his pocket, but his hands were wet from mopping. He set the mop against the wall and pulled out the pad to check his assignment list. This was a mistake. The moment he let go of the mop, it started to slide down the wall. Do-hyun grabbed for it quickly, but his wet hands made him fumble. The mop fell with a loud clatter, the handle bouncing on the metal floor. The sound echoed through the corridors. The cub's ears perked up. Thrax's tail twitched. That noise was like a prey animal making a mistake, revealing its location. The hunt was on. Do-hyun bent down to pick up the mop. As he straightened up, he saw three pairs of amber eyes watching him from the shadows. His heart jumped. "Oh no," he whispered. "Not again." Kirill stepped out first, moving slowly. His posture was low, ready to pounce. Venna and Thrax spread out, flanking him on either side. They had done this perfectly. Do-hyun was surrounded with no easy escape route. "Stay back," Do-hyun said, holding up one hand. "I am just cleaning. This is not a game." But it was a game to the cubs. The human was still teaching them. See how he used verbal communication to distract them? See how he positioned himself against the wall to protect his back? These were excellent defensive strategies. Do-hyun made a choice. He could not let them trap him again. He turned and ran. Running was exactly what the cubs hoped he would do. They gave chase immediately, their powerful legs eating up the distance. Do-hyun was fast for a human, but he was no match for young Valtorians built for speed. He could hear their claws clicking on the floor behind him, getting closer. He dodged left into another corridor. The cubs followed, their bodies leaning into the turn without slowing down. Do-hyun spotted a supply closet ahead and changed direction sharply. He pulled open the door, jumped inside, and slammed it shut. His breath came in gasps. His heart pounded. This was insane. Through the gap at the bottom of the door, he could see shadows moving. The cubs had stopped outside. They knew he was in there. They sat down to wait, their tails swishing across the floor. Do-hyun could hear them talking to each other in their language, probably discussing strategy. Inside the closet, Do-hyun looked around for options. Shelves lined the walls, filled with cleaning supplies, spare equipment, and tools. A cart sat in the corner, loaded with bottles and brushes. Maybe he could use it as a distraction. He waited for a few minutes, letting his heartbeat slow down. Then he quietly unlocked the door and pushed the cart out hard. It rolled down the corridor, supplies rattling and bouncing. The cubs' attention immediately shifted to this new moving object. They pounced on it, and bottles scattered everywhere. Do-hyun used the distraction to run in the opposite direction. He headed back toward the main training hall. Maybe if he got to Instructor Taros, the cubs would have to leave him alone. His legs burned from running, and his uniform was soaked with sweat and cleaning solution. This was not how maintenance work was supposed to go. He burst through the doors of the training hall, breathing hard. Taros was there, supervising a group of different cubs working on combat techniques. He looked up in surprise as Do-hyun ran past him. "The cubs," Do-hyun gasped. "They are chasing me." Before Taros could respond, Kirill, Venna, and Thrax entered the hall. They stopped when they saw Instructor Taros watching them. Their ears folded back slightly. Maybe they had taken the training too far. But more cubs in the training hall saw Do-hyun standing there out of breath and looking panicked. They saw 3 of their classmates in hunting positions. Something exciting was happening. Whatever drill this was, they wanted to join. Do-hyun saw more cubs starting to pay attention to him. He needed to get back to work, to prove he was just a maintenance worker. He spotted a broom leaning against the wall and grabbed it. If he looked busy cleaning, maybe they would lose interest. He started sweeping the floor of the training hall, pushing dirt and sand into small piles. The broom had a long handle, even longer than the mop. This gave Do-hyun more reach, which felt safer. He swept quickly, trying to ignore the growing number of cubs watching him. The broom movements were even worse than the mop. The long handle made wide arcs through the air. The bristles made scratching sounds against the floor. To a young Valtorian, this looked like a prey animal with a long tail swishing back and forth. It was irresistible. A cub named Solus had been practicing jumps from the upper platforms. She saw the moving broom and all her training clicked into place. Instructor Taros always said to watch for opportunities. This was an opportunity. She leaped from the platform, executing a perfect aerial intercept. Solus came down on the broom handle with both front paws, her weight and momentum driving it toward the floor. Do-hyun did not see her coming. The broom was ripped from his hands and he spun around in surprise. The spinning motion caused him to bump into another cub, Mara, who had been approaching from behind. Mara interpreted the bump as an attack. Her training took over. She counterstruck with sheathed claws, a defensive move they had learned last month. Her paw hit Do-hyun in the chest. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to push. The floor was still slippery from the earlier spilled water. Do-hyun's boots lost traction and he slid backward across the floor like he was skating on ice. He flailed his arms, trying to keep balance, but it was useless. He slid a good 10 feet before falling backward and landing on his rear end again. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. The cubs erupted in excited chirps and growls. This was amazing. The human instructor had shown them aerial attack responses, defensive counterstrikes, and now advanced evasion using the slippery floor. He was teaching them so many things. More cubs joined in, surrounding Do-hyun. Some grabbed the broom and started a tug-of-war with it. Others practiced their pouncing on the dirt piles he had swept together, sending dust everywhere. A few started sliding on the wet sections of floor themselves, trying to copy what the human had done. The training hall descended into complete chaos. Cubs ran in every direction. Cleaning supplies scattered across the floor. Instructor Taros shouted commands, but the cubs were too excited to listen properly. Even he was confused now. Was this really a new training method? The human seemed very good at creating unpredictable situations. Maybe that was the point. Do-hyun lay on the floor covered in dirt and soapy water, watching cubs play with his cleaning equipment. He wondered if he could quit his job. He wondered if there was a form he could fill out to transfer to a different academy. He wondered why he ever thought seeing the galaxy was a good idea. A large shadow fell over him. Commander Ravik stood there, looking down with those amber eyes. His expression was unreadable. "Interesting training session," the commander said quietly. "Very unusual methods." "I am not training them," Do-hyun said tiredly. "I am trying to clean." Ravik looked at the chaos around them. Cubs were having the time of their lives. They were engaged, active and working together. He looked back at Do-hyun. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we should talk about this in my office." Commander Ravik's office was much quieter than the training hall. The walls were covered with weapons and medals from past campaigns. A large desk sat in the center, built for someone of Ravik's size. Everything in the room spoke of discipline and military precision. Do-hyun stood in front of the desk, still dripping water and covered in dirt. He felt very small and very out of place. Ravik sat down in his chair, which creaked under his weight. He studied Do-hyun for a long moment, his amber eyes thoughtful. His tail swished slowly back and forth, a sign he was thinking carefully about something. "Explain to me what happened today," Ravik said. His voice was calm, not angry. "From the beginning." Do-hyun took a breath and explained everything. He talked about trying to clean the training hall. He described how the cubs attacked his mop. He mentioned running away and being chased through the corridors. He explained the broom incident and sliding across the floor. As he talked, he felt more and more foolish. It all sounded ridiculous when he said it out loud. Ravik listened without interrupting. When Do-hyun finished, the commander was quiet for several seconds. Then he did something unexpected. His whiskers twitched in a way that might have been amusement. "You understand that the cubs think you were training them?" Ravik asked. "Yes, sir," Do-hyun said. "But I was not. I was just doing my job." "I know," Ravik replied. "But consider what they experienced." A small creature moved quickly through their space, creating unpredictable patterns. When they engaged, you evaded. When they cornered you, you escaped. You used tools as weapons and distractions. You demonstrated lateral thinking and survival instincts. Do-hyun blinked. "I was cleaning and running away." "Yes," Ravik agreed. "But from a training perspective, you showed them things they need to learn. Not all enemies will fight directly. Not all challenges will be obvious. Sometimes survival requires creativity, not just strength." "So I am not in trouble?" Do-hyun asked carefully. Ravik's expression became more serious. "That depends. Tell me, human, what do you know about Valtorian military training?" Do-hyun shrugged. "Not much. I know you train young ones to hunt and fight. I know you are warriors. We are warriors," Ravik confirmed. "But we face a problem. Our cubs are very good at fighting other Valtorians. They understand our tactics because they are born with similar instincts. But the galaxy has many species, many different types of enemies. We need to teach our cubs to adapt to unexpected situations." He stood up and walked to a window that overlooked the training grounds. Several groups of cubs were practicing outside, their movements coordinated and powerful. "Last year we lost 3 teams in border conflicts," Ravik continued. "Not because they were weak, not because they were poorly trained. They lost because they faced enemies who did not fight the way they expected, enemies who used tricks, deception, and unusual tactics. Our warriors did not know how to adapt quickly enough." Do-hyun started to understand where this conversation was going. He did not like it. Ravik turned back to face him. "Today you accidentally taught my cubs a valuable lesson. You showed them that a smaller, weaker opponent can still be difficult to catch. You showed them that not everything that moves is prey. You showed them that they need to think, not just react to instinct." "Commander," Do-hyun said slowly, "I appreciate that you are not angry. But I really just want to clean floors. I am not a teacher. I am not a warrior. I am a maintenance worker." "I understand," Ravik said, "and I am not asking you to become something you are not. But I am asking you to consider a proposal." He walked back to his desk and pulled out a data pad. His large claws moved carefully over the small screen. "I am prepared to offer you a new position. Environmental Adaptation Specialist. Your job would be to perform your normal maintenance duties, but to do so while cubs are training. Your presence would create unpredictable elements in their environment. You would not need to directly teach them anything. Just do your work." "That is what I was already doing," Do-hyun pointed out. "It did not go well." "It went better than you think," Ravik countered. Instructor Taros reviewed the recordings from the training hall cameras. The cubs showed excellent teamwork. They communicated effectively. They adapted their tactics multiple times. Their performance scores for today were the highest they have been this month. Do-hyun could not believe what he was hearing. "They chased me with my own mop." "Yes," Ravik agreed. "And they did it very well. More importantly, they learned that not everything in combat is about strength. They learned to pay attention to their environment. They learned that small things can be dangerous or useful depending on the situation. The commander pushed the datapad across the desk. The position comes with a significant pay increase. Triple your current salary. You would also receive combat training of your own. Just basic defensive skills. We cannot have you getting injured, and you would have assigned rest days to recover from the more intense training sessions. Do-hyun looked at the numbers on the screen. Triple salary was a lot of money. That was enough to pay off his debts back home. That was enough to help his family. That was enough to make a real difference in his life. But was it worth being chased by alien cubs every day? I need to think about it, Do-hyun said. Take tonight, Ravik offered. Give me your answer tomorrow morning. But know this, Do-hyun. What you did today was valuable, even if it was an accident. The galaxy needs warriors who can think. We cannot teach our cubs that by only having them fight each other. We need outside perspectives. We need unusual challenges. Do-hyun left the office with his mind spinning. He went back to his small quarters in the maintenance wing and sat on his bed. His muscles ached from all the running. His uniform was ruined. He would need to requisition a new one. But the number he saw on that datapad kept floating in his mind. Triple salary. He thought about his mother back on Earth working 2 jobs to support his younger siblings. He thought about his brother who wanted to go to university but could not afford it. He thought about all the reasons he had left Earth in the first place. To make money. To help his family. To build a better future. Could he really do this? Could he spend his days being chased by giant alien cats? The idea was ridiculous. It was dangerous. It was completely outside anything he had ever trained for. But maybe that was the point. Maybe being outside his comfort zone was exactly what he needed. The cubs certainly needed it, according to Ravik. And the money would change everything for his family. Do-hyun barely slept that night. He kept thinking about the cubs' excited faces. He remembered how they had worked together, communicating without words. They were young and enthusiastic. They did not mean to scare him. They just saw him as part of their training, as a challenge to overcome. And he had challenged them. Not on purpose, but he had done it. He had moved in ways they did not expect. He had escaped situations that should have trapped him. He had survived an encounter with multiple predators using nothing but cleaning tools and quick thinking. Maybe that was worth something. The next morning, Do-hyun put on a fresh uniform and walked to Commander Ravik's office. His decision was made. The commander was already at his desk, working on reports. He looked up when Do-hyun entered. I will do it, Do-hyun said before he could change his mind. I will take the position. Ravik's whiskers twitched in what was definitely satisfaction. Good. We will start with a trial period. 3 months. If it does not work, you can return to regular maintenance duties with no penalty. If it does work, we will make the position permanent. He handed Do-hyun a new datapad with his updated job description and schedule. You will start tomorrow. Today you will meet with our combat instructor for basic defensive training. You need to learn how to fall properly and protect yourself. The cubs will not mean to hurt you, but accidents happen. Do-hyun took the pad and looked at the schedule. It was full of training sessions, both for him and times when he would work in various training areas. His cleaning duties were still listed, but now they were labeled as environmental adaptation exercises. One more thing, Ravik said. The other instructors need to know about this program. We are calling it Human Evasion and Pursuit Training. It will be explained to all cubs starting today. They will understand that you are part of their education. This should help prevent complete chaos. Should help? Do-hyun repeated. Not will help? Ravik showed his teeth slightly, which might have been a smile. Cubs are unpredictable. That is why they need training. You will learn to adapt. That is what humans are good at, yes? Adaptation? Do-hyun thought about human history, about how his species had spread across Earth, surviving in deserts and mountains and frozen wastelands, about how they had reached for the stars with primitive rockets and stubborn determination, about how they never gave up even when things seemed impossible. Yes, he said finally, we are good at adapting. Then you will be fine, Ravik said. Dismissed. Report to Instructor Taros in Training Room 7 for your defensive skills assessment. Do-hyun left the office feeling strange. He was no longer just a maintenance worker. He was an environmental adaptation specialist. Whatever that really meant, he was about to find out. 3 months passed. Do-hyun could hardly believe how much his life had changed. He walked through the academy corridors with confidence now, carrying his mop and bucket like they were military equipment. In a way, they were. The cubs had learned to recognize him on sight. Their ears perked up when he entered a training area. Their tails swished with anticipation, but things were different now. The cubs understood that Do-hyun was part of their training. They did not attack randomly anymore. Instead, they waited for the designated practice times. Instructor Taros would announce environmental adaptation exercise, and then Do-hyun would begin his cleaning work while the cubs practiced stalking, pursuing, and strategic thinking. Do-hyun had learned a lot too. The combat training had been difficult at first. Instructor Taros taught him how to fall without getting hurt, how to roll when he needed to escape, how to use his smaller size and agility to dodge larger opponents, how to read Valtorian body language so he could predict their movements. He was not a warrior, but he was no longer completely helpless either. The cub's progress was remarkable. Commander Ravik showed him the data regularly. Reaction times had improved by 15%. Strategic thinking scores were up 20%. Most importantly, the cubs were learning to adapt to unexpected situations instead of just relying on instinct and strength. They were becoming better warriors because of Do-hyun's presence. Today was special. It was graduation day for Kirill, Vena, and Thrax's group. They had completed their basic training and would move on to advanced combat studies. A ceremony would be held in the main hall with families attending and medals being awarded. Do-hyun was invited, which surprised him. He was just staff, not a real instructor. But Commander Ravik insisted. "You were part of their training," Ravik said. "You should be there." Before the ceremony, there was a final training session. Do-hyun entered the training hall with his cleaning equipment, just like he had done dozens of times now. The graduating class was there, 15 cubs who had grown stronger and more skilled over the past months. They stood in formation, waiting for Instructor Taros to give the command. "This is your final environmental adaptation exercise," Taros announced. "Show me what you have learned." Do-hyun began his work. He moved across the floor with the mop, creating the familiar back-and-forth patterns. But he was not nervous anymore. He knew what to expect. The cubs would stalk him first, testing their stealth skills. Then some would try direct pursuit while others would attempt to cut off escape routes. It was all part of the routine now. Kirill led the first group, his dark brown fur sleek and his movements precise. He had become an excellent tracker. Vena flanked from the right, her clever mind always thinking 3 steps ahead. Thrax came from the left, using his size to intimidate and control space. They worked together like a real hunting pack now. But Do-hyun had learned their patterns too. He saw Kirill's ear twitch slightly before he moved. He noticed Vena's tail position that meant she was about to change direction. He heard Thrax's breathing pattern that indicated he was preparing to pounce. Do-hyun dodged left, rolled forward, and came up next to a support pillar. The cubs had to adjust their approach. Perfect. The exercise continued for 30 minutes. Do-hyun used his mop as both tool and weapon, creating barriers and distractions. The cubs adapted, trying new tactics they had developed. When Do-hyun thought he had escaped to a safe area, he found cubs waiting in ambush. They had learned to predict his behavior too. It was exactly what good training should do. Push both sides to improve. When Taros called an end to the exercise, both Do-hyun and the cubs were breathing hard. Do-hyun's uniform was dirty but not destroyed. The cubs looked satisfied with their performance. They had caught him twice and he had escaped 3 times. "Balanced results, well done," Taros said to everyone. "You have shown excellent progress." Dismissed to prepare for the ceremony, the cubs filed out, talking excitedly among themselves. Do-hyun started to leave too, but Kirill approached him. The young Valtorian had grown larger over the months. He would be an impressive warrior someday. "Thank you," Kirill said and carefully practiced common language. "You taught me much." Do-hyun was surprised. "I just cleaned floors." Kirill's whiskers twitched. "You taught me that strength is not everything. That small can be dangerous. That thinking is as important as fighting. These are good lessons." Vena and Thrax joined them. Vena chirped something in Valtorian, then translated. "You are strange teacher, but good teacher. We will remember." Thrax simply nodded his large head, showing respect in the traditional Valtorian way. Then the 3 cubs left to prepare for graduation. Do-hyun felt something unexpected. Pride. These young warriors had learned from him, even though he never meant to teach. He had made a difference in their lives. That meant something. The graduation ceremony was impressive. The main hall was decorated with banners representing different military units. Families filled the seats, proud parents watching their cubs receive recognition. Commander Ravik stood at the front, his uniform covered with medals and honors from his years of service. Do-hyun sat in the back with the other staff members. He watched as each cub was called forward to receive their graduation certificate. When Kirill's name was announced, the young Valtorian walked with confidence to face Commander Ravik. The commander spoke about Kirill's excellent tracking skills and strategic thinking. He mentioned specifically how Kirill had shown growth in adaptive combat situations. The same happened with Vena and Thrax. Both received praise for their ability to handle unexpected challenges. Their families cheered with deep rumbling sounds that echoed through the hall. After all the certificates were distributed, Commander Ravik held up his hand for silence. "There is one more presentation today," he announced. "We have begun a new training program this session. The human evasion and pursuit training has proven highly effective. Our cubs have shown remarkable improvement in areas that were previously difficult to teach." Do-hyun felt his face grow warm. Everyone was looking at the human section where he sat. "Do-hyun," Ravik called. "Please come forward." Do-hyun stood slowly and made his way to the front of the hall. He felt very small, surrounded by so many large Valtorians. The cubs he had trained with watched him walk forward. Their expressions showed respect, which was strange to see directed at him. Ravik held out a metal object. It was a ceremonial mop, crafted from what looked like expensive alloys. The handle was carved with Valtorian script. "This is for you," the commander said. The inscription reads, "First pray, greatest teacher." It is a traditional honor given to those who teach warriors valuable lessons, even in unexpected ways. Do-hyun took the ceremonial mop. It was heavier than he expected and beautifully made. He did not know what to say. His throat felt tight with emotion. "Thank you," he managed. "I never expected any of this." "That is what made it effective," Ravik replied. "You were genuine. You simply did your work and survived. Sometimes the best lessons come from watching someone be true to themselves." The audience made sounds of agreement, deep rumbles of approval. Do-hyun bowed slightly, the way he had learned to show respect. Then he returned to his seat, holding the ceremonial mop carefully. After the ceremony ended, families gathered around their cubs, celebrating and taking pictures. Do-hyun started to leave, but several parents approached him. They wanted to thank him personally for training their children. Some asked questions about human culture and Earth. Others simply wanted to see the human who had accidentally created an entire training program. As the crowd thinned out, Do-hyun found a quiet corner and looked at his ceremonial mop. The metal gleamed in the light. The inscription was carved with precision and care. He thought about the past 3 months. The chaos, the fear, the learning, the growth. Not just for the cubs, but for himself too. A new group of humans arrived at the academy next week. Part of the continuing cultural exchange program. One of them was named Hyejin, a young woman who worked in engineering. She found Do-hyun in the maintenance wing and introduced herself. "I heard about you," Hyejin said, smiling. "The human who became a combat instructor by accident. Is it true?" "Unfortunately, yes," Do-hyun replied. "I have some advice for you. Be very careful about when you do maintenance work around the cubs. They have strong hunting instincts." Hyejin laughed. "I will keep that in mind. But it sounds like you made the best of a strange situation." "I did," Do-hyun admitted. "It was not what I planned, but it worked out." She looked at the ceremonial mop hanging on his wall. "That is beautiful. You must be proud." "I am," Do-hyun said. And he meant it. He had come to this academy to clean floors and earn money. He had found something more. Purpose, respect, a place where his human adaptability and stubborn survival instincts were valuable. The next training session was starting soon. A new group of cubs would be arriving. Young ones who had never experienced the environmental adaptation exercises. They would learn the same lessons that Kirill and his friends had learned. That strength alone was not enough. That thinking mattered as much as fighting. That even a small maintenance worker with a mop could be a worthy challenge. Do-hyun grabbed his working mop and bucket. The ceremonial one would stay on his wall, a reminder of how far he had come, but the real work happened with everyday tools.